My name is David Hamilton, and I'm a developer for a local company that does real estate lead generation called Market Maker. And tonight I'm going to be hopefully telling you a little bit about OAuth. And there seems to be a lot of confusion about what OAuth actually is. There are some people that think OAuth is a login flow, like when you sign into an application using Google login or Facebook. There are some that think it's some kind of security thing and really don't know much more than that. And hopefully you leave tonight with a better understanding of what OAuth is and how you can possibly use it in something you're working on. So what is OAuth? OAuth is not an API or a service. It's an open standard for authorization that can be used to provide client applications with secure delegated access. So basically, not necessarily authentication, but authorization. And OAuth works over HTTP to authorize devices, APIs, applications with access tokens rather than credentials. So it's more secure. And there are two versions of OAuth, OAuth 1 and OAuth 2. The two versions are completely different and cannot be used together. There is no backwards compatibility. And OAuth 2 is the most used one now. OAuth is not an authentication protocol. OAuth is an authorization framework and not a protocol. It gives you a way to ensure that a specific user has permission to do something. It isn't meant to validate a user's identity. That is taken care of by an authentication service. OAuth 2 alone OAuth 2 alone has absolutely nothing to do about the user. You just have a token to gain access to a resource. Why OAuth? OAuth was created as a response to direct authentication pattern where a user is prompted for a username and password. Although direct authentication is very easy to implement, it can cause numerous problems. One of the biggest problems is there is no way for a user to revoke access permissions for a third-party application. So basically, if somebody logs into your application using a username and password, there's no way to easily just for them to get out of it. And with OAuth, they can revoke access for your application, because most, like Facebook, you can go in and look at all the connected applications you have and easily kick it off. And OAuth enables apps to obtain limited access to users' data without giving away users' password, and it decouples the authentication from authorization and supports multiple use cases addressing different device capabilities. It supports server-to-server apps, browser-based apps, and mobile and native apps and console TVs. You can think of it like hotel keys, but for apps. If you have a hotel key, you can get access to your room. And how do you get a hotel key? You have to do an authentication process at the front desk to get it, and after authenticating and obtaining the key card, you can then access resources across the hotel. Scopes and consent. Scopes are different permissions and applications can request, like in getting access to Gmail from Google or accessing profile information on Facebook. One of the projects I worked on at my work, we were implementing the ability to send emails through your different email providers, Yahoo, Outlook, Gmail. So that's where I was using OAuth, was to gain access to the Gmail services from Google. And we also use it to gain access to the calendar so that real estate agents can put their calendar events from our system into their Gmail calendar. The use of scopes allows for applications to request the specific permission it needs and not have access to all the permissions available. So with the standard username and password, it's pretty much an all or nothing type thing. And with OAuth, you can just say, I want access to Gmail, but I don't want access to calendar. With Google, and the scopes are often listed in the API docs for the different providers, and scopes requested by an application are displayed on the authorization screen when an app requests permission. So like whenever you were logging in for the Web Devs app and you had to authorize through Meetup, it said what it was accessing. This makes the capture user consent. This makes you capture the user's consent and lets you build trust with the users that you're only getting consent to use certain permissions. There are like four actors per se with OAuth. You have the resource owner, and that's the person that owns the data in the resource server. So that's like your profile information on Facebook. That's your information, but then it's hosted on the resource server, and the API stores the data that the application wants to access. And the client would be the Web Devs Meetup app. That would be our client that we were using. And the authorization server, that's the main engine for OAuth, and that was Meetup for the Web Devs app. And we have the OAuth tokens, and there are two types of tokens. You have your access token and your refresh token. The access token is what's used by the client to access data on the resource server. They're meant to only have a short lifespan before they expire, and due to having a short lifespan, they can't be revoked. But the refresh token is the other token, and it's used to get a new access token when it has expired. And each time you refresh your access token, you get a new signed access token that's encrypted. And then when an application's access is being revoked, it's the refresh token that's actually being deleted and not the access token. And there are two main types of OAuth flow. You have the implicit flow, which is really aimed towards single page applications, browser only, and an access token is returned directly from the authorization request. There's no backend server redeeming the authorization request for an access token, and it typically does not support refresh tokens, so it's a more of a limited access and not a long-term access. And due to having everything in the browser, it's more vulnerable to security threats. And the other main flow is the authorization code flow, and the authorization code flow is typically what most people think of whenever they think of OAuth, and it's whenever you click the login with Facebook button, and it will take you to Facebook and you enter your information. Well, it returns a authorization code that then the backend server will take in exchange for the access token and optionally a refresh token. And it's the most secure because you can authenticate the client to redeem the authorization grant, and the tokens are never passed through the user agent. And sadly, that's mostly what I have. But the
explain the implicit flow a little bit more? I'm sure I understood.
the implicit flow is what we used for the Web Devs app, and you basically tell it that you just want an access token whenever you're requesting the authorization, instead of saying I just want to grant, I want to get a grant of access. And it's makes it easier to get the OAuth flow, but because it's just everything's done in the browser, it causes security issues, because if somebody could just easily sniff your access token and then they would have access to your account.
course. No, I lost my notes. So this is the meetup file for the Web Devs application, and we request, this is the URL that we use to authorize with, and we're asking for response type that's token instead of a code. So this is a implicit flow, and we're redirecting back to the local host because it's the application on the phone. But we have two different ones because this is what we were using for the application on the phone, but to test on our computers we had to have another one because in-browser app what we use for the phone is not supported on the computer. And then this is the login. So a lot of this is because the Facebook login tried to take over the browser whenever we're trying to log in. But we created a new in-browser window, and then whenever we started, we set it up so that it's listening. And then we told it that we're going to go to the login, which it then entered the URL for the authorization on Meetup, but it then is basically ignoring Facebook trying to log in. And then ignoring the Meetup authorized screen, and then it's checking to see if there's a access token that's been returned, and if it's been returned, it stores it in local storage. But if it can't be, it says it can't be authenticated. And that's one of the problems we're currently trying to figure out, is why on Facebook it's popping up like that. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Why does the app have that bug in it?
Why does it have that bug? Because I've been busy.
The one that prevents you from getting redirected on. That's a serious question.
What?
The authentication bug. Do you have a theory of what's
Well,
causing that?
it's basically listening for the URL to return with the access token, but because it's not returning immediately, you're going through a alternative OAuth as well. Whenever you're using Facebook, it's causing issues. Because if you log in straight with Meetup credentials, it doesn't cause the issue, but whenever you're using Facebook, it's hitting another URL and it's not listening for that URL, so it's causing it to break.
So you'll fix that.
Maybe.
So what's the advantage to using OAuth?
What's the advantage to using?
Why would I use this particular authentication?
What's the selling point is basically it allows you to for your customer, your end user, to have better control over what they're sharing with the application, and then you can also use it so that you can limit what a user has access to as well. So if you don't want somebody to have access to something, you can set the permissions to only be a certain thing. And with a lot of OAuth, it's going to, like, a big one is Auth0, which allows you to easily implement OAuth from a lot of the social providers, so that you can just basically drop a code snippet into your code base and people can log in with Google, Facebook, Twitter, everything. So that's one of the upsides of it, is you're able to use like Auth0 to implement your authorization and your authentication. Okay.
When I log into a web application that wants to, say, integrate with my Twitter account to send out tweets or read my friend list, do those apps usually connect to Twitter over OAuth, or do they use some other way to gain authorization? Do you know how that usually works? Is that the same idea that we're talking about here?
It's the same idea, using OAuth, and they're asking, the scope they're asking for is the permission to post for you.
And so, since they've registered with my account, is that why it shows a list of all of the different apps in my settings? Is that how Twitter's able to manage that list?
Yeah.
Okay.
The authorization services, your Facebooks, your Twitters, how do they manage the identities? So you can authenticate your credentials through other services, but how do they know who you are?
How does Google and them know? Because they're the authentication server, so they have all the information
So
about
they're
who you
providing
are.
that information for you.
It's basically, you've provided it to them, and whenever you're using that to log into another app, you logging in is letting the other app have permission to look at your authentication.
And so across, like, let's say just Facebook and Twitter, right, which we got like 2 players here, do they have separate identity services? So let's say I'm rolling into an app, right, and I have a tweet on my Facebook, and I don't remember which one I've used in the past to get into this app with my custom credentials. If I guess wrong, if I actually have done all of my app history with Facebook and I choose Twitter because I just can't quite remember, is it as if I'm a new user in this app?
Yes, it's from a new user because it's a different identity provider.
Okay, so the identity is separate.
Any other questions?
Have you ever gone through the process, or can you speak maybe a little bit more to what it takes to be a OAuth provider? So of course we've got, the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Googles. What if I've got a really large user base and I want to become like a provider? I want to extend OAuth. Have you done that personally?
No, I have not done that, but
It seems like we're always talking about consuming a block. We're really talking about I don't know the need, but it would be interesting for me to know about this.
So you said you can set the scopes of an OAuth token. So if I have an app and I want to say, okay, user A can have access to these features, user B can have access to these features, I can determine that by the OAuth they come in as. Is that how that scope works?
basically, whenever you're setting your URL, you're setting what your scope you want it to be. although I don't see it on this. Oh, there it is.
Scope RSVP. So this URL, like you could set it so that only certain users could have it just by having your scope set as a variable and then putting in the variable of what scope you want each user to have whenever they go to log in. Because on the application I was working on it, my job, we have the scope for the calendar and we have the scope for the Gmail, and depending on where you're at in our application and you click, it gives you access to the calendar, it gives you access to Gmail, and if you have access to either one already, it gives you access to both.
You're doing it by request, not by where they're building or feature doors. But
It's-
each request every
yeah.
that's what it's. Is it typical to store the access token? So,
Yeah.
like, in a database, you store the access token, and then you set user permissions by that.
Well, user permissions is like whenever you request for the access token, you're setting the scope, which that's setting the permissions. So whenever you have the access token, it's already got the permissions set. And you do save the access token, and if you have a refresh token, you save the refresh token as well in the database. So that whenever you connect, you try the access token, and then if the access token says it's expired, you refresh the access token with the refresh token.
Are there any security best practices or something like that? If you were compromised and the access and the refresh tokens are stored, you effectively could have provided direct access to someone's account. What are some of like the best practices in storing that?
I don't know.
Just storing and forgetting about it?
That
I'm with you.
I think you can set short expiry times on them and renew them, and then if something happened, you could go through and force revoke all of them.
What's like a default TTL look like? Is it like minutes, hours,
Days.
days?
It depends on the application, but most I think are days.
Thanks, David. Yeah. Did anybody not sign in that wants to sign into the app?
I can't get it.
Yeah, buggy online. I just
David? Are you getting like the load error or whatever?
I know I'm actually getting to where there's a check-in button, but it just seems kind of unresponsive.
That's me. That was my fault, bro. And so you hit check-in, it just does nothing?
There's a little. I mean, you can tell the L that's pushed. It kind of has like a little effect, but it doesn't really do anything beyond that.
Alright. Well, sorry. You should hang around tonight. We're gonna fix this stuff.
That's right.
Alright. Let's see if this works, huh? David, you want to do the honors? Oh, we're gonna see what prizes we even have in there. I don't know if I loaded them properly. Wait. Oh, yeah. Sorry. That URL I sent you. Yeah, load that bad boy up. I'll have to log in. Sorry. Okay, good. Shut up, Jason. I can't see which one is which. Which one says never or no?
That one.
Where's the X?
The blue one.
The X. I know that one. Okay. What do the prizes say? What's that say?
Okay, we're not gonna do one. This is gonna be the JetBrains license. Okay, I didn't.
Okay, wait a minute.
Okay, all right.
It was the first
It was the
one.
first option.
It was.
Yeah.
I thought that was a label.
No.
Which JetBrains license?
Hey, it's really hard to see from over here. Calm down.
Why?
All right. Okay, here we go. Oh God. No! You put that. You hacked that in there, didn't you?
Let me see if I can.
No, that's not in there yet.
Access to the server.
The-
I can decline it in the app, right?
It's not in there yet.
What? That
Calm
was a
down.
feature.
It was a test feature.
No, I was number 2.
Brendan was the first one. All right.
Not an alert. It's all JavaScript.
Shit. Hopefully there's no refresh tokens in there. Okay, wait, all right, here we go. Here's another. You're passing, right?
Passing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So,
I've
all
got-
right.
I've got
Another
my-
chance for the JetBrains license.
Hey.
Oh man. Boom.
There it is.
Let's see if you get the push notification.
It did.
All right.
It's JSON.
JSON in there, right? Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that. All right, sweet, it worked. Okay, so we'll Tom Rankin is on vacation, and he'll email you your license for that from the next. Okay.
I can find sign in.
All right. Here, I just want to mass test the notifications real quick, so we can just, let's see here. Did I see Craig?
Hey,
Hey, there's there.
Hey, I won.
congratulations.
Yeah, all right. Sweet. That's a good stress test on the notification system.
Hey,
But Nate won, right? Is that you? All right, I gotcha. Cool. So we started late and wrapped up a little early, so feel free to hang around, socialize, polish off some pizza over there. Within about, I'd say, 30, 40 minutes and stuff, we'll probably start setting up kind of a little work area to start messing on the app if you want to hang around. So thanks everyone for coming out, and we'll see you next month.